Welcome to Sword and Shield, the official podcast of the 960th Cyberspace Wing. Join us for insight, knowledge, mentorship, and some fun as we discuss relevant topics in and around our wing. Please understand that the views expressed in this podcast are not necessarily the views of the U.S. Air Force nor the Air Force Reserve, and no endorsement of any particular person or business is ever intended.
Welcome to the Sword and Shield podcast. I'm Colonel Rick Erredge. Today I'm joined by
Chief Master Sgt. Chris Howard.
Hey Chief, how you doing?
Not too bad, right? It's a pretty good week so far.
Good, yeah. Post UTA week for us here, and so there's always a number of things that are rattling around in my head, and doing some reflection about what happened and how we can do things better. And what's going around in your head these days?
Well, sir, with a lot of things. UTA, you get a lot of fires that get dropped on your desk, and then also I'm doing some professional development on the side myself. And the thing that's getting stuck in my brain right now is really what I call is touch point leadership, right, and touch point management. I think that some people have heard a version of, at least in my head, as management by walking around, but I'm not trying to put a negative context to it, right? So as I'm doing the professional development on team building. One of the things that came up is how do we engage with our team members in a good manner, and in the spaces that they feel comfortable. So
yeah, I heard that as a lieutenant too. Management by walking around, and that usually followed by things of get out to know your people,
right?
Be a leader, lead by example, do the things that they're doing. Ask if you can turn the wrench. Ask if you can, push the broom. Whatever they're doing. Get out there and kind of break that barrier down and see that job or that task from their perspective.
No, definitely, right? So I think that looking back through my career, a lot of my positive reflections upon leadership were moments that they were in our work center and engaging, right? So I had one commander a couple assignments ago who had never worked on a forklift. And we got this new forklift, and it was really touchy. It was sketchy as all get up. But we warned him, put him in there, but he started rolling around our pad where we were putting up pallets on this forklift. And we're like, it was just funny just seeing him, how he reacted to it. But the important part was that he came down to where we were at because our facility was detached from the unit. We were miles away. It was really easy for us to be considered out of sight, out of mind. We felt that way quite often. Right. So the fact that here the commander came down and spent some time with us and goofed off in a positive way, learned a little bit, but also helped us a little bit and built that relationship. And I think that that also brings to mind the fact that when we look at our wing, right, and even each group, doesn't matter what level you're at, there is a certain level of distance between all of us.
Yeah, the tyranny of distance we talk about can be really difficult. And I had a similar experience as you when I was a second lieutenant. I had a boss that I was doing some writing on some A-10 weapon systems and missiles. And there's at that time, there's no A-10 sim. There's really not a part test trainer. And a second lieutenant as a personnel education training specialist,
right.
I couldn't grasp it. And he's like, okay, let's go. So we walked out to the flight line. They spun up a jet. He sat in the cockpit. He let me sit in the cockpit. He showed me what the pilot sees through that view.
Okay.
And then I was immediately able to visualize what I needed the words I needed to use to get the point across of what training material we're working on. And just that little example was extremely helpful for me to understand. And I think I later moved to that. My next assignment, or I PCA'd, was to that same unit.
Okay.
And so I went from from off the flight line onto the flight line as squadron section commander. And I used that opportunity to wander around and kind of, the squadron commander always wants to know, what are the people thinking? What are they feeling? What are they talking about? And as a first lieutenant at the time now, I had that opportunity to get around and meet people. And in that environment, it was easier because we had all 550 people. We're all within, a couple hundred yards on the flight line, and we could do that. This wing obviously is much different, the way we're distributed across the United States and a number of mission sets. And so I find myself challenged often about how we're connecting with our airmen and what's the best way to do that.
Right. No, definitely, sir. Right. The gains that we get from that individual conversation are invaluable. I can tell you that there's a lot of things I would just not learn about our airmen if it wasn't for those moments that we discuss, right? Finding out about their families, about some of their goals, or even some of their hobbies that all lead to bigger things, right? So like right now on my board, I'm working on some of our strategic vectoring for our senior NCOs. And I'm coming from name like, okay, I know this individual based on this conversation. Now, there's still plenty of senior NCOs that I have, very little insight on that's putting the challenge on me to get out there and find out about them. And then also challenging those superintendents to give me the same feedback so that we can understand that whole airman concept. Because that's important, right? Especially as we're detached. When we look at COVID, spending that time either on the phone, video chatting, and if at all possible, personal, is going to lead to how do we build a good, strong culture and climate within the 960th.
Yeah, and I think it's really important to do that, not necessarily within our wing, but every supervisor, every subordinate supervisor, everybody in the chain needs to, we talk about know your people. And so we just say that. We don't really tell people what that means, but, knowing somebody's birthday is, right. Knowing, and especially now in COVID, like understanding who's doing school at home, right? Who's being a home teacher, and just understanding those points as when you're talking to them, so you understand what stressors is going on in their life. If they feel that they understand, that their boss understands them, knows what's going on, I think it takes that piece of the stress off of them and makes them more productive and efficient member of the unit.
Yes, sir. And also understanding their why, what's driving them, right? So why do they put that uniform on? Why are they in this job? What keeps them, invigorated to continue to do this job? Because the demand signal keeps on piling up every day. The distance keeps on getting driven between us on a regular basis with everything going on with COVID and society. So it's those conversations and those touch points that I think are very key into developing that relationship and making sure that those bonds don't get broken. Because I feel at times that those bonds are in jeopardy.
Yeah, it's certainly tenuous and stressed and stretched, maybe, if you think about in a rubber band. And so we've tried to do that through a number of ways, and this podcast is one of those ways, right?
Sure.
So give people a little bit of insight to us and what we're thinking about and what our stressors are. And so I've got some good feedback about people just love to hear us talking about, normal things day to day that we're stressed with and sharing some things. But I think that goes both ways. And for me, COVID has given us a unique opportunity into people's lives that we might not have had. Right.
True. Yeah.
And so seeing people on video, hearing things during phone calls about, the dog bark, and especially around the holidays, I think if we would have did some metrics around the number of dog barks or people's packages showing up during calls and stuff, would have been off the charts. But, I giggle about that. And, I was on the phone with Miss Martinez one time, and her dog was just going nuts about something. And we just giggled about it. Like, that doesn't bother me. It just gives me a little insight of what's going on. And, I've heard about people, kids having a fight in the background over a toy or something. and a certain member had to put us on hold. They had to change a diaper. Like all that stuff helps us understand what's going on in people's lives and really helps. And now I have that, hey, how's this going? Or how's it going now? Or I remember this. Has that changed? And it's really makes that personal connection for people and makes them feel like they're really part of the unit.
Right. It humanizes us, right? It definitely gives us some insight that it's not just this wall or that door or that title. Now, all of a sudden, I'm sure that people have been on calls with me where they've probably heard my daughter singing some kind of random song. I don't know if she knows words to any particular song. But
I've heard it. It's awesome.
Right. I enjoy it personally to a certain degree. Just like, but those little things that now you get an idea into that person's life and understand that, okay, now that person isn't as rough or gruff or as much of a wall as I thought they were. Right.
Yeah. So I'm going to call out, well, I won't do that. I'll tell that story off air, but I'm sure you've, been on calls when I'm at home and, my wife loves to like turn the dishwasher on during my phone calls. And so I gave her this look, and we have this back and forth about, did you really do that? Like, washer and dryers run in the background. I'm like, it's all this noise. Cause I can't get Wi-Fi back in my office. Otherwise it'd be back in this little makeshift office we have. So,
gotcha.
People have kind of heard that, and I've heard giggles and comments about what's going on. And so I enjoy sharing a little insight as well. And, it kind of a little bit of stress, like, hey, this is really hard what we're doing.
Mm-hmm.
And so just being able to breathe and giggle about something really helps me.
Right. And now also I would put some of the positive spins on some of this distance for me personally. And I think that the fact that I've been able to work from home a little bit more is let me see my daughter a lot more. Right. And I get to hear those songs, the media songs, right?
Those are the things you're going
right.
to cherish forever, right? It's
exactly.
not the work I made you do.
Right.
It's the singing the songs and that relationship with your daughter.
It's a mix, right? Because break time is hide and seek time, right?
Okay.
So
awesome.
If I get a 15-minute break, it's you go hide. Daddy's going to grab his lunch between meetings real quick, and then I'll find you real quick along the way. So, but it goes back to those touch points, right? So if we are able to engage with our team members and our airmen and find out what parts are working for them in this scenario, and finding out what's working in their lives, then that helps us make some good decisions, right? Or present opportunities we might not have necessarily thought they would be interested in.
Yeah, and I think for me too, I've been able to probably meet and work with a broader range of people than I might normally would not have, specifically around the telework and the virtual space. Some folks are able to have opportunities, professional development opportunities, to dig into a program or do some professional development that I've been able to join and learn about them as they're doing presentations, or see some people that are presenting topics and issues for decisions and things we want to do that normally we probably wouldn't have had the chance to do, right? It would have got rolled up to a higher level, and then the commander would have done it. We're empowering our people to do these things, and we're seeing great strides. And even though I can't get out there and visit every airman in person, I do feel like I got a connection there. We started meeting with each unit virtually.
Right.
We had a really good discussion this past weekend with one of the units. We're going to keep doing that. And I think that also helps. It's probably a little bit awkward for some people. I feel more comfortable with it now, but it's probably more awkward for those airmen. And sometimes it's easier just to walk up and be able to talk, ask somebody a question. So we're trying to break that barrier. Certainly doesn't replace the in-person touch point.
No, definitely.
But we're trying to make do with what we can. And so at some point we'll be able to get back out there and travel.
Right. And I think that as we progress, right, as vaccines come into play and we see herd immunity, and we start to restrict the COVID, we have made a giant paradigm shift, right? Especially from a reserve perspective. We look at some of the technology that's now in place, that's been proven, and we've got good numbers against. It allows us to then relook at how we do day-to-day business, even as a traditional reservist, right? How can I get after some of these problem sets so that I can spend more time doing the training or doing the mission during the UTA? How do I offset some of these needs, right? Especially for my traveling TRs. How do I make that a little bit more desirable? How can then I expand my pool of applicants, right? So pre-COVID, the paradigm was really stuck of, well, if you're going to be a TR, you're going to have to be here every month and you're going to have to travel. I think that requirement's still there, but there is some flexibility at the tactical level to make some decisions of, okay, well, we can offset this, maybe forego this piece and still get the desired outcome.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And I don't know, I don't want to go back to that model, right? I want to do something in between where the squadron commander is making good decisions about, this is who I need here, this UTA in person for this reason, whatever reasons those are. And then these folks, especially if something's going on in somebody's life, or just the commute time, even if it's local, right? Just saving somebody an hour during the day can equal into a more effective and better morale for that person. And so we're going to continue to push for that. And I've heard all the way up to General Scobie say, we're not going to go back to doing business the way we did. Let's reimagine what participation looks like for reservists, to the point of, does it have to be Saturday, Sunday? Right. If somebody's work schedule is that they have Tuesday, Wednesdays off, why can't they do their drill Tuesday, Wednesday, whether that's in person or virtual? Right. And so I challenge our leaders and supervisors out there, to think differently about it. I know it's going to be hard, right? Because it's out of the norm.
Yes.
You got to manage different schedules, but we can find ways to be just as productive or more productive if we're meeting people where they are best aligned to do the mission.
Right. Yeah. And then by having those communications, right, having those touch points, then you can understand what's going on in that individual's life and then match that up to a certain degree, right? There's some things we're not going to be able to necessarily always adjust against, but at least having that conversation so that we can see where we can make this beneficial for both. Because really, when we talk about the reserves, it's a symbiotic relationship. And as long as we can keep it beneficial to both sides, I think we find a lot of growth, and then we get into innovation, and then we actually get into mission execution, and then the joy of serving, right?
Yeah, I agree. And I think balance is probably a bad word. I grew up in the reserve, like the three-legged stool, right? We need to balance a three-legged stool, your civilian job, your family, your military job. So I don't necessarily think those stool legs are all the same length.
No, definitely not.
At any one time. And they move between, and they should be able to move between what's going on in your life. So you might not be able to sit on the stool. It's going to stand, right, but the seat is going to be tilted at wonky angles and tilted. And right. I think looking at it from that perspective understands people coming, going, and on ramps and off ramps for their level of participation based on what's going on in the other parts of their life.
Yep.
Looking at their participation is a little bit easier. Maybe we get closer to that level seat that we can sit on and really call it good. And so for me, I think if you think about, at least the way I think about it is, if I can do a different kind of model, because how many times on UTAs Chief, have you said, man, it's Sunday afternoon, end of the day, people are signing out. You're like, man, I never got a chance to really check on so-and-so. I didn't get a chance to talk to so-and-so because so many things are going on.
Right.
If we break up the participation in a different way, like it gives that supervisor more touch time,
right,
with their individuals, because it's not everybody at the same, it's not the supervisor meeting 1 hour with everybody. You're going to have 2 meetings, but gives you an opportunity to engage smaller groups of people to learn more what's going on, give them an opportunity to participate and be more productive in whatever that role is they have.
Right. And I know that like the fear instantly comes in of, is that a demand upon more of my time? And I think that's where as leaders, we have to look at, it's not so much more of a demand, it's an adjustment in how we demand that time, right? It doesn't mean that you need to work 20 plus hours to get there. It's how do I readjust some of the other things? How do I prioritize this relationship as important, right? Especially in that leadership role, right? As a supervisor, as a superintendent, as a commander, which weapon system am I more worried about? Is it the biggest weapon system, the personnel, or is it this one little weapon system that executes this part of the mission?
Yeah, if you think about if you're spending your time in ways that makes your people feel more inclusive and part of the mission and productive, there's probably less time you need to spend doing remediation, right, training, maybe disciplinary stuff. And so that time goes away. So it's not necessarily that we're adding to your time as a supervisor. We're asking you to use your time differently to be more effective. And frankly, maybe there's things we should stop doing. Like, I think that's on the table too. So I think if everybody went through an exercise of, what do I need to start doing? What I need to stop doing? What I need to keep doing? I would like to see, more touch point leadership go in the start column. And then hopefully some other things can go on the stop column because you don't need to do those anymore.
Yes, sir. I mean, and I think that we're in a prime environment, right? As we've gone through COVID, now we also have the accelerate, change, or lose. That's not just mission. That is how we do business as a whole. It's a philosophy. It's not necessarily a mission statement, right? Mm-hmm. And then that drives me to think about the counterbalance. You talked about the stool and the balance and everything like that. We talked about some of the demands, but how do we get away from fatigue? How do we balance from fatigue, especially the fact that that normal cycle was I started my day off. Let's say I got up at 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning. I'm prepping in the day or in the morning. Then I'm off to work, and maybe it takes me a half hour, 45 minutes to drive to work. Then I'm doing my coffee. I'm doing my routine. I'm getting myself set. I do my day. Then I go home. I got another 30, 45 minutes to drive. So I've got some of that downtime, right? When we do a lot of the telework, where's that downtime that's built in? What were those rituals that you were doing before? I think we talked about some of the engagement models of, the 10, the 2, 10, 4 and 7, or 5 and 7. My math's off. So.
That's all right. Yeah. So I think about that, and in my world, my 2 used to start at 5,
right,
and then went from there, and now my 2 starting at 6. And so like my world has shifted an hour to the right. So I'm still trying to put enough time in, but I find myself spending more time working during more work hours across our different time zones, right? So we've got a pretty big window from east to west coast. And so I've tried to kind of look at what's the best fit. And so I've seen that model shift, and I don't know if it's good or bad, but there's an issue there with self-discipline and boundaries when it comes to work, for sure.
Right. And that's where I'd like to challenge everybody out there is in that beginning to really build yourself a good solid regime, right, of what that looks like to get yourself prepared and make sure that you're ready for the day, as well as holding as firm as possible on that 5 and 7, right? That 5 being that whatever you're doing for you and your family, and that 7 for the rest, adjust where you need to. If the fatigue's kicking in there and your sleep's getting damaged because of it, long-term effects are going to be much more problematic than just taking a deep breath and shifting this or offloading that, right? And finding out what's really important.
Absolutely. Yeah, that shifts throughout your day too, in days, weeks. And so I found it helpful that I have this watch that tracks my sleep. And so I do look at it every night, kind of see the type of sleep and the length of sleep I got. And I'll try to adjust and just try to get more, or like yesterday, I woke up and I felt great, right? We had the COVID shot Tuesday. Right. Wednesday, I wake up, I'm like, wow, I don't have a sore arm or anything. It's great. I went for like a 4-mile run. And then this morning I got up and I was like, holy moly, what happened? I am not into it today.
Gotcha.
And I don't know why, right? But tonight I'll take a look at it. Like, I probably need to go to bed, maybe not early, and then figure out what that looks like. So if I'm going to cut an hour out of the 5 for the family, then today I'm going to have to cut an hour out of work to give the hour back to the family. Right. And I think that's where I find getting, again, I don't like the word balance, but a better allocation of my time is that sometimes it's going to come with the expense of work. And I know it's right. We're on day 11 in a row here.
Yes.
And so if I need to take, I need to work 9 hours instead of 10 today, then I'll do that and make sure I'm putting the time where I need to. But I also need help. I need people around me, family and work family, to say, hey, remember, 2 hours workout, prep for work, 10 hours of work, 5 hours family, and 7 hours sleep.
Yep. Again, not firm, but a good guideline, right, to start with, definitely. Now, I know that you challenge me on a regular basis, sir, as a team member to make sure that I'm keeping those allocations in the right zones and making sure that, healthy, both physically, mentally, prepared for work, and also that the family life is not taking too much of a hit, right? Because as you said, we've got all these different time zones that we've got to hit. The demand signal doesn't change when we talk about full-time versus TR staff. The demand signal changes for our TR staff, right? So they have to do their full day of work. Then they get engaged in the evening. They need information from you. So that extends that out and finding the best way to support both.
Yeah. And so I've been a TR, and I was a TR squadron commander, and I know how hard it is. And so when I talk to them too, I try to assess what's going on in their lives and make sure they're thinking about those things.
Right.
And then I think the load, empowerment's probably an overused term, but being able to trust your folks and having, knowing them good enough because you spent time having touch time with them and understanding what they are allows you to be more effective and use your time where you need to, and maybe dial back at certain times where you need to.
Yes, sir. That trust is key across the board. The trust that you have in them and the trust that they have in you. And the only way we really build that up is through those touch points.
I agree. And so touch point leadership, I think, is really important. Again, we like to challenge people on here. We like to challenge our staff to find ways to do that. We're certainly available for you if you want to talk more about that, about different ways. And I think don't overthink it. Like, it's just getting out from behind wherever your workstation is, whether that's calling somebody, FaceTiming them, video chatting them one-on-one, and being a little bit unpredictable with when you're communicating with people, and check on them when maybe maybe when they don't think they need it, but checking on them just to make sure they're doing okay. And, saying happy birthday too, right?
Yeah.
Celebrating something like that makes you feel like a big part of the team.
Sir, I appreciate you giving me the time to really get that off my chest. It was definitely rattling in my brain today. So thank you, sir.
No, that's great. And so until next time, everybody, have a great day.